Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jake Anamano. I'm doing my psychology class observation video. I decided I would actually show you my raw reaction as I'm watching the video, and as you can watch the video too. I think that'll make things interesting, and then that way we can kind of, instead of me at the end, instead of you watching the video and then getting a broad overview of everything, and also you'll kind of lose the context of certain areas I'm speaking about. This way you can actually see what I'm thinking when I see it. You can agree or disagree. And then at the end of the video, I'll do a more specific overview of everything as we're going. I might skip some parts because I don't know how much interesting stuff is going to happen, how much stuff we can analyze that's different. But yeah, I haven't watched the video prior, so let's get to it.
Raise your hand, football players. Cameron.
You said
the team is amazing. You guys win every weekend because
our skills are good our skills are good.
Your skills are great. What else? Kinston. You keep on practicing. Phenomenal. Let's look at the next box. Look in the purple box. What is the next word that is down there? Yes? Right here. Put your finger on it, please. I need the tracking finger going.
So, something I find interesting already is that all the children wear uniforms, and they're also, I would like to assume, African American. I think we can make that observation. The reason I find this interesting is because we're currently on Chapter 5, maybe some of Chapter 6, and there's a lot of... These chapters stress a lot about intelligence and culture, and so that's why I bring it up. It's really interesting to me how eager all of these students are to listen and to participate, because when I was around this age, I'm going to assume it's kindergarten through second. When I was around this age, I mean, there were tons of different people who, we didn't listen, or we were, we got in trouble. I mean, all these kids seem so attentive, and it's honestly impressive. It makes me wonder, if their parents are in the same kind of working class.
What do you think that means?
Because it's just very interesting how all these students are very interested. They seem all very intelligent, bright young kids. I love how when the teacher asks a question, she lets the child speak, and you can hear a pin drop. It's like nobody else is talking. Anyway, let's continue.
Maybe?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Who thinks no? Kayla, why not? Why do you think no? Something specially made. Would I give this same thing to everybody? Because is it important? Kamani told us that if something is special to you, it's important to you. Is something that's important to Kamani important to everybody?
No.
Kamani might have, what's your favorite animal at home? Your favorite stuffed animal?
My dog.
Your dog? What's something that's really your favorite toy ever? Jakai?
Parrot.
Your parrot? What's your favorite toy, Amari?
Parent. What are they doing? Beating them up?
Your stuffed baby toys. Now, do you think that if Miss Wiggins made something specially made for each of you, that it would be the same thing?
I'm gonna analyze this, and also I'm gonna apologize for laughing because future psychologists can see this, and that's not gonna make me look good. So I like how she kind of gives everybody a chance to raise their hand and give them their opinion. I know when I was younger, a lot of classes were very just, okay, I'm going to give you an assignment for today, you're going to complete it, you're going to hand it in, and then tomorrow we start something else. When I was younger, we didn't really have a whole lot of observations. I like how that girl, that guy, he just dropped his pencil and she picked it up for him. That's really nice. It sounds childish, but it just seems like everybody in this classroom, out of all seriousness, is eager to help each other. I like that a lot. You know, it's really good, and we talk about in Chapter 5 empowerment. Not only empowering your students, but empowering your students to be, you know, connected, you know, in terms of like with their peers. You know, we kind of consider this like it's called the Big Five or Ocean. And it seems like this teacher does a really good job. There's also the fact that we have to consider it's very obvious that somebody's walking around and recording this, so the students are 100%, they have to know that they're being recorded. I think it's really interesting that the whole class is African American, and they also, I forgot if I mentioned this before, but they're also wearing uniforms. The reason I find this so interesting is that, does that eliminate prejudice, or does that enhance it later in life when they encounter other people and other, you know, types of, you know, I guess like ethnicities or cultures? I mean, I think that it's personally just to eliminate prejudice amongst the class. I don't think so, but that's been like a timeless question among, you know, schools, is does this help or does it, you know, destroy? And I mean, just again, my personal opinion, I think it helps. I think it's interesting how all the young men, well, not everybody actually, but most of the males have red shirts and most of the girls have white shirts, although I see some interconnecting with both of those. It's very, so it just amazes me. The reason I was talking about the person recording, it just amazes me how attentive they are, and it makes me wonder if they're being, you know, are they being this good because there's somebody observing them, or are they normally like this? To me, it seems like they're normally like this. So anyway, let's continue.
If you're stuck on something like your math, it might mean that you don't know the answer and you'll need to get help from somebody. So you might have a private tutoring session. Miss Wiggins has rock star time, and we sit and we talk about the things that are really, really difficult for us, and we work on them, right? So I like that one because to struggle doesn't mean that you just struggle with something physically, right? Something holding on to you. You could struggle with something in your brains too, right? Miss Wiggins has a really hard time remembering certain things from math. When she was in high school, it was so hard for me. It was so hard for me. And even when I got to college, it was harder. But I had to be a true scholar, and I had to work hard, and I had to ask for help when I was struggling, right? Let's go on to the next one. Aren't we all
just want to say,
here?
I love that.
Let's go on to the next one.
Preach it.
I need a volunteer to help me sound out that word. Miss Wiggins has a hard time remembering these words. Go ahead, Amari. Help me out a little bit, please.
Traction.
I'm sorry, a little bit louder.
Traction.
Class, can you say it?
Traction.
Traction. Who thinks they have an idea of what traction might be? Traction. Kinston.
Like when you're running.
Fantastic. High five. Like when you're running. Let me tell you why. He's on to something good. He's not there yet. Who else can help him? He's got a big clue. Miss Wiggins likes that clue.
I like that even though that student didn't necessarily get the correct answer, she didn't put him down for that. She actually was very empowering. I also really liked prior is that she was saying how if you struggle with something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it or that you have to do it alone. You know, it's good to have help, and that's honestly so true. I really like that a lot. Just a quick observation of that.
When your mommies and daddies buy tires for their cars, they want to make sure the tires have good traction. Oh! Yes.
Good driving.
Good driving? Not quite. Let's think about it a little bit harder. Janae, you think you have a clue?
I think traction means when you're trying to drive your car right, so you can make it like go faster.
trying to drive your car right and you can make it go faster. 2 big clues. We said something that you need to go running and something you need to drive your car right. Now let's think about this. To help you out. If Miss Wiggins has good traction on the floor, or my car has good traction on the road, my car is not going to slip off the road. Miss Wiggins isn't going to slip and fall. And if I'm running, I can run really fast if my traction on my sneakers is really good. What does that mean? Because if not, I will just slip and fall. Where do you think traction is? Christian? I'm sorry. Louder and prouder with conviction, please.
Like a grip or something.
Like a grip or something. Excellent job. Traction. Give him a round of applause. Good.
Like the empowerment?
He's on top of it. He's on top of it. I like how he's thinking.
We think it's great.
Excellent job.
Wow. It's a lot of empowerment. I really like that. So that's my that's my observation. It's my video. I'm gonna kind of just do now like a focused overview of everything we just watched, and kind of just like a quick summary, and we'll take it from there. So we already talked about the big 5. There were a lot of other things I really wanted to jump on as well that I just, observed from the video and thought that it would be, kind of like just almost necessary to the video to talk about that maybe you may have missed. I thought it was interesting that they're kind of in like the intuitive thought substage, which is kind of like they know that people are watching them and they're kind of aware of their surroundings. It's kind of like the it's kind of like Erik Erikson's theory of children around this age, between like the ages of like kindergarten, 5, maybe even 7. But I just found it really interesting how, the children did a really good job of not watching the observer, which is usually pretty rare, especially because they're walking around with a video. I find that really interesting. In terms of like between class ability and, between class ability grouping, I don't think that is necessarily existent. I think that all the children there are kind of grouped together based off their intelligence and like their socioeconomical standard or standpoint. But it doesn't look like they're actually categorized in the class. But it is interesting because it definitely looks like they're in a private school. I think that that's probably a pretty safe conclusion to come to. I have to say, from personal experience, I went to a pretty, decently middle upper class, school district, and we were not as eager to answer questions. We were not as attentive, that whole class, it's not only a really small class actually, but it's very impressive to see how disciplined all the students are. Something I found interesting looking across the textbook is that Jackie Irvine in 1990 and Janice Benson in 1982, they observed that African American students are more often expressive and high in energy. I really like the way this teacher teaches her students, because I think she really empowers them and gets like their energy out in a way that's positive. If you let energy, it's like a battery. If you charge a battery too much, it's going to explode, but if you charge the battery just right and know how to use it, in proportion to what you're using, it really helps a lot, kind of stay monotone. And I really like how she's very kind of like interactive, like the kids are raising their hands, they're jumping to raise their hands. I love that. And she kind of does, like, she gets the children to listen to that's what amazes me, is that you can tell these kids have like quite a bit of energy bursting, but yet when somebody talks, they are quiet. Nobody else is talking. And yet, in a way, the teacher does make little fun things like the thinking caps, and she does do like physical interactions and like clapping for somebody who gets a right answer. Lots of empowerment, lots of like physical activity along with the, obvious book work. I like that a lot. So the multicultural education, that's something that's kind of an interesting topic. It's interesting because, they're all part of the same culture. They all have the same uniform. And so there's not a whole lot of diversity in that aspect. And that's okay, it's not a bad thing. It definitely is just really interesting, though, how, it's kind of just like the kids wear red or white, black slacks, or I guess for maybe the young women, I wasn't paying attention, but I guess skirts, black slacks or skirts, and, black shoes, I think. And that actually eliminates prejudice, which is another big thing that we've been talking about in our, textbook. Or even, like, gender biased in a way, too. I'd like to imagine that teacher probably, is very well aware and isn't gender biased at all, and I think that's really important for a teacher to do that, because yes, it's important to empower people based off their, roles and qualities that they may want to have, but, it's good also to obviously keep an open mind and keep a clean slate on what somebody wants to do, because if somebody, you can do anything, no matter what your gender is for the most part. What's it called? I just kind of want to finish the summary with just talking about socio-cultural diversity, multicultural education, and gender, because again, those are the big things that we've been talking about in our chapter. So under the bracket of socio-cultural diversity, you have culture, economics, or socio-economics, ethnicity, and bilingualism. Those are typically things in a socio-cultural diverse classroom. They all speak English. They are all among the same culture, I think, for the most part. They may have different religions. I'm sure they have different types of parents back at home, although their parents probably have similar jobs or similar economics, which would be the next bracket. And then they also are within the same ethnicity. So it's interesting because there's pros and cons to that. The pros is that it kind of eliminates any kind of racism or biased or prejudice. But at the same time, sometimes it's actually very healthy to have lots of diversity. So it's kind of pros and cons. Again, these children are very young, so I don't think that it would have a negative impact on any of them, but it is something to look at. In terms of multicultural education, we have empowerment, culturally relevant, the way the teacher, proctors to the students, issues centered around education, and improving relations among different ethnic groups. I think all of these, except for that last one, are very applicable. This teacher is phenomenal at empowering her students. I think that everything seems very culturally relevant. I mean, it just kind of seems like a regular American school district. I mean, probably a private school, though. It definitely looks like a school district that's more of like an upper class. So either it's the children are more gifted, maybe, and they got placed into a separate higher classroom, or the parents are a bit more economically sound and they put their children in a private school, or both. We don't know. Issues centered around education. It doesn't seem like they were kind of just talking about simple definitions. They're kind of too young to be talking about like different issues I think they have around their education. I think that as they get older and they start to get a little bit more freedom as any kind of person, you want to remind your students as they get a little older, the different struggles and things that have gone in history and how your education specifically is centered to help everybody in the class. And in terms of improving relationships among different ethnic groups, again, you can't really do that because everybody in this classroom is in the same ethnic group. Gender is really important, especially because that's like the one difference that is among the different students. I mean, obviously, yes, you know, kids might have different shoes, different likes. I mean, you know, it's important to remember that no matter what kind of school you go to, even if it's an all-boys school with, you know, uniforms, it is absolutely impossible to ever fully get rid of prejudice because everybody would have to have the same color eyes, hair, ancestry, same likes of like clothing and, you know, views, and that's just impossible. So there was bound to be in this video at least one, you know, issue, or not really issue, but at least difference among the students, and that was gender. Most of the male students wore red, and most of the female students, although there weren't a whole lot of female students, I think there were only like 4 or 5, typically wore white, although I think 2 of them wore red, so it was like a 3-to-2 ratio. But even still, they all, you know, there were the young men who wore white, you know, the young boys, I should say, who wore white. So it's, so that kind of eliminates discrimination against what you wear. You know, and in this bracket, excuse me, I forgot, in this bracket there's gender views, gender stereotyping, gender controversy, role classification, and in context and elimination of, you know, stereotyping. I don't think that any of these happened, honestly. I think the teacher does a great job. Again, it's a pretty short video, but I think that the teacher does a great job of being fair to everybody. I think that, you know, she calls on different students. She called on female students. She called on male students. She called on all different colored shirt students. You know, it doesn't seem like she has a stereotype. She all treated them the same. You know, she stayed quiet. She didn't interrupt them when they were thinking or speaking. She didn't make any kind of physical elements that would make you think that she was impatient with them, or it didn't seem like she was biased, as far as I'm concerned, to any of those students. And that's, you know, pretty ideal being a teacher. So I think overall, you know, she did a really great job, you know, teaching. I think for students, especially in this age, it's not necessarily important to ignore like lots of these issues, but because they're so young, a lot of these issues aren't necessary to cover at the moment. You know, you don't have to talk about how, you know, how, like, you know, you're all, like, you know, who knows? Maybe the teacher did talk about how, you know, oh, you guys are all in this class because you're, you know, you're African Americans like myself, and we are all in the same district. Or maybe, you know, or maybe not. Maybe it's just that, you know, you are all very gifted and you're in the school. Or maybe your parents are economically sound and so they can put you in private school. And that's the thing. It doesn't really sound appropriate, and I doubt it was even said. And again, they're kind of too young to really understand or it to kind of have an impact. It's not until they really get into, like, honestly, social media, which is the biggest, you know, thing about, you know, kind of hitting psychology at the moment, is social media among psychologist patients, because it just has such an impact on how we think and, you know, all the different people in the world and how you view others and whatnot. So I don't think that a lot of these things will actually be, you know, in effect until they're a little older and they start using social media more. But I definitely love how the teacher does such a good job of interacting with her students, you know, giving them positive feedback and empowerment, and using their energy positively as well, you know. So anyway, I think that sums up everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. This was Jake Adamano,